I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're here with Halon Entertainment's Chris. Chris, why don't you tell people what your title is and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Chris Ferriter. I'm the president of Halon Entertainment. Halon we're in our 20th year this year. So we've spent the better part of the last 2 decades helping creatives better plan for their films. Historically, we were in previs. That was our core business. So what we would do is we would work with creatives, directors, visual effects supervisors to realize scripts, turn words into animated images, and help them plan their shots. We specialize in a couple different services all around the visualization. Pitch viz, pre-viz, post-viz, tech-viz. And really, it all represents different stops along the production process to better plan for a film. It's incredibly important these days, especially with the emergence of virtual production and the requirement that we start to think a little bit in the front end and less in the back end.
Would you argue, and I've heard people say this, that virtual production has been around in various ways. So how did you build on the experience doing what you're doing with previs? How does that come into the world of virtual production?
Well, okay, so I'm going to say something maybe that's somewhat controversial. I think one of the issues that we have with virtual production is that we call it virtual production, right? Because you're right, this has been around for a long time. So this is production with a modern tool set. What we're doing is we're just using modern tools to make films, and this is no different than the changes that we saw in the past when we went to digital workflows or we went to digital visual effects, nonlinear editing. These are just evolutions of tools that are already in use. I think what we've been doing with visualization for the last 2 decades represents virtual production as well. When we're planning our shots using virtual reality headsets, that's virtual production. Motion capture, to a certain extent, is a component of virtual production. And what we do is take all of these tools and you string them together in a pipeline that makes sense for the project. Whatever that project needs, you're bringing tools to better execute on that project. A lot of them now happen to be built around real-time engines. And so when we look at it around a real-time engine, Unreal Engine, or mostly Unreal Engine, that's when we start to tag it with that virtual descriptor.
So almost like next generation of virtual production. So your company is part of a bigger world, so to speak. So NAB, also Prism Stages.
Yes.
How do you all work together? I'm assuming that you guys are figuring things out and sharing with one another and making workflows a little more smoothly. More smoothly.
Yeah. We were acquired by NAB almost 2 years ago now. NAB, of course, is a massive broadcast company. They're built around 3 pillars on their business: broadcast, live events, and us, which is virtual studios, and that encapsulates Halon, Lux Machina, Prism Stages, and Screen Scene, which is visual effects. And so the idea there was that we represent most steps in the process necessary to execute on a virtual production. And by working together, we could better understand what the other groups needed and build that into our pipeline. So there is an idea now that when we have a Lux production or a production that's being shot on a Prism stage, the assets that we're building in our virtual art department are designed to be able to run efficiently on those stages and make it predictable, because that is one of the problems that you get into with any new technology is it's new, and you need to be able to demonstrate to productions that it's reliable, that you can execute in the same way that you would have on a practical shoot.
So not to be intimidated by virtual production, and also I spoke to somebody yesterday talking about how you don't have to have a giant company to be able to use virtual production. So there are different, I guess, levels or tiers of how you use the technology.
Well, I think it's different. You know, it's a lot of different technologies, and one of the most amazing things is the accessibility to people now, and I think we're going to enter a time of really just increased explosion of creativity because we can, you know. Sorry, I'm going to rewind for a second. Back in like late 2000s, when off-the-shelf game engines started to be available to people, when digital distribution platforms like Steam or the App Store were available, you saw this absolute explosion of creativity in the game industry, where people now didn't need to be backed by a large publisher in order to make a game. You didn't need millions of dollars of funding. You needed a group of motivated people, and that group of motivated people could take off-the-shelf tools and they could create something really special. And I feel like we're on the cusp of that in film as well. And it's not that we've never seen this before. I think when we saw, you know, DSLRs or cameras that were affordable that could shoot quality film, you started to see new creators coming, creating new indie films, and I think we're on the cusp of something very similar to that now with virtual production, where anybody can get a hold of these tools and create something special.
It's fun. It's an interesting time.
It's really an amazing time to be working in the film industry. I'm very grateful to be here right now because I feel like things are changing in a pretty massive way.